Good morning. Good morning. We're good? All right. So first of all, there is a very sweet spirit in this space this morning. I'm sure everybody's present to it, but I just wanted to say it. This is the time, by the way, when you find yourself in this kind of space to start asking for things. When you find yourself in kind of a vibrational space that feels good and delicious and you feel connected to the divine, this is the time to start speaking. Don't get shy now. You talk about stuff any other time. This is the time to actually access the divine. So I want to thank everyone for allowing me to come and be with you again. This idea of transformation is, I have to tell you that it was a little bit hard for me to actually kind of wrap my mind around how I would talk about this. And part of it is that in the 21st century, it's a little harder to be in awe. And maybe it's not so much that it's harder, but it's harder to remember when we have been in awe. And that literally something has got to be almost catastrophic to get our attention. We don't have flying cars yet. Teleportation would have really helped me last night. Because just would have helped. But we do have more answers now than we ever have had, and more solutions to some of the questions and the ills that face us as human beings. I was thinking about the early days of the AIDS crisis, as it is Pride Month, in addition to this month where we're focusing on transformation. And I remember and I was in college, just getting ready to exit college, and there was this disease that did not have a name. For the first 2 years of the crisis, doctors did not even know what to call it. And we needed a transformation at that time. That was what was needed. In the gay community, most immediately, but as we saw in the years right after 1982, around the world, we needed a transformation, not just in the disease itself, but in who we were being about the disease and about the condition. And there were small groups of committed people who got together and said, we are Americans, we are citizens, we are dying, and we need your help. We need money, and we need a cure. And while we don't have a cure yet, we have more resources than ever before, where no man, woman, or child has to die because they contract HIV. And that was not always the case. And so there is something for us today to be in awe of. And if it's not a personal memory for you, for those of you who it is a personal memory, it must be shared so that we don't rob ourselves of being in the awe of God. We use the word awesome for everything now. The child goes to the potty, that was awesome. But it's really important that we pull ourselves into the awe of God, into the awe of the divine and the all-knowing. Because other than that, we're limited by what we see. That's all that can actually manifest of our relationship with the divine. So that's my quick sermonette on Pride Month inside of Transformation. And while there is a lot to celebrate, there is also a lot to do. There's a lot left to do. So going to the Gospel according to Merriam-Webster, the definition of transformation tells us it is a complete or major change in someone's or something's appearance, form, etc. So that transformation is a major or a complete change. Not a little one, not kind of like a slight one. That it is an act, process, or instance of transforming or being transformed. And from a spiritual perspective, transformation is both a central idea, but it's also a central ideal. It is something that traditions around the world aspire to and have examples of in one way or another. And our search to really try and transcend this human experience, to have more, to understand more, to do more within this human existence is very attractive, for the spiritual person, that we're going to transcend this human experience, but that is both plagued and inspired humanity. Because often when we don't feel like we're transcending the human experience, then we're doing it wrong. If we're walking around having a human experience and not really kind of like, floating through downtown Sag Harbor and just ethereal and light and loving everyone, then somehow we are failures, that we're not being our full selves. And so there are a couple of myths that I want to deal with around this topic. So the first myth is that change is transformation. That just change in and of itself is transformation. And often when we're talking about a transformation we've had, we're really talking about a change that we've made. And we want to be able to start telling ourselves the truth and distinguishing those things. Because change is good. There's nothing wrong with change. And we should aspire to change various things within our life. Our capacity to shift and adapt to people and circumstances, all of that resides in the world of change, and all of that is for the good, and it can encourage ourselves, encourage other people. But as spiritual people, change can sometimes fall flat. Like we make a change, but it just doesn't seem like enough. Or we're not satisfied with the change that we've made. Like it's just insufficient for the life that we want to lead. And we really do know inherently that the changes that we've made are not the same as the transformations that we've had. But sometimes it's easier to talk about the changes that you've made, because if you actually started talking about the transformations that you've been through, people might think you were crazy. So it's easier to hold the transformation closer to the vest, but what that does is that it cheats the spiritual community of the awe of God. Then we're only telling kind of like bedtime stories about transformation, as opposed, like children's tales, as opposed to novels of really what God can do. And I know it because it happened to me. So what falls in the world of change? You don't call your partner names as much as you used to. You've had a change. But you still call the partner names. You only lie to your family when it's absolutely necessary. Like, we will never get through Thanksgiving dinner if we tell Aunt Mary the truth. So just lie to her. It's just going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's a little white lie. You only steal supplies from work for your niece now, as opposed to when you were stealing supplies from work for your niece and your other two children. So now your other two children don't need the supplies, only your niece does, so that's better. Now you're not stealing as much. And rather than stay home, you've decided to come to church regularly to tell people what's wrong with the church. You've had a change in your life. I'm going to be a stand for the church being all that it can be, and every week I'm going to make sure that I tell them what's not working. That is a change I'm bringing about in my life. And you can hear that all of these examples of change kind of lack the sparkle that transformation does. A complete or major change is what's meant by transformation. Do you remember when you forgave someone? Or you asked for forgiveness and it was granted? That is a moment of transformation. When you got sober and maintained your sobriety for however long it was, that's a moment of transformation. When you knew you were in love, and literally the whole world shifts at that moment when you know that you know that you know that you are in love with another human being. The moment when you knew God, not as a word, not as a story someone else told, but you knew that there was this entity that you were uniquely and inextricably connected to. And the moment that you knew that God knew you, that is transformation. It is a complete change of understanding. It is a complete shift of being. Transformation is more than change. It is a state change. It is a change of the way in which the world operates and the way in which you see it. But the second myth is that transformation is permanent. And this trips us up, it trips me up all the time. Because when we experience spiritual transformation, we almost don't know what to do with the feelings or the emotions of it, because we don't often live our lives moment by moment in spiritual transformation. More times than not, we're familiar with change, but we're not necessarily as familiar with what does it mean to dwell in the space of transformation. What do we do with those feelings when we're in the midst of transformation? What do we do with those emotions? And more importantly, what do we do with the power that we feel? Because when you connect to the divine, and when there is this moment of transformation, there is this experience of power. Like in the moment, you really don't think that there's anything that you cannot do or have. And that is frightening. It's literally like sending too much current through an electric board and the board just explodes because it can't handle the current. That major change, when transformation has taken place, we're able to see it in ourselves. We know our experience of it. but there also is the experience of the people around us bearing witness to the transformation. And you probably have the experience where someone has come up to you and said, I don't know what it is, but something is different about you. And then we can, because we don't really want to share, well, what happened was, last night for the first time, my mind got healed of something that has been plaguing me for the last 15 years. That's what happened. There was a transformation in my mind. But our response is usually like, oh, thank you. And then it disappears. So when we don't give transformation something to latch on to, then it devolves, because what we do is we surrender the power we're experiencing. We give it back. As opposed to saying, okay, God, I'm experiencing this power. Teach me how to use it. That's the next transformation I want. I don't want to be afraid of the power that I experience when you and I transform something. I want to be able to harness and use that power for my good and for the good of others. See, transformation, because we don't often seek it enough, occurs like it's a gift. Sometimes to the unworthy. Like we still hold on to that kind of thinking that if something miraculous happens to us, that we're not quite worthy of it. That's old thought. That's not new thought. New thought has us know, and sometimes it's going to have to be by trial and error, that when we experience transformation, it is right and appropriate, and as people seeking a new, thoughtful relationship with God, we should be looking for more. We should literally be walking down the street just transforming every 5 minutes or so. Then people really say, now I really see something's going on. Every day you look different. Third and final myth is that your transformation is for you. Because we're obsessed with ourselves. We're like the best story ever told. Forget reality TV. This is the greatest story ever told. We're obsessed with ourselves. And our culture at this point has us just feeds us more and more reasons why it's okay for you to be obsessed with yourself. It's fine. You should be obsessed with yourself. When the Buddha was about to transfigure at the moment of enlightenment, to literally lose all shape of body and to fully move into enlightenment, there was a moment where the Buddha turned away from the experience of enlightenment to say, what I must do is show others the path. Because the Buddha had the opportunity to just transform away in much the same way that they went to the tomb to find Jesus and the body was not there. Same experience. And the Buddha said, I'm going to go back and show people the path. You get healed and expanded in every area of your life every time there is a transformation in your life, where there is a complete or major change in your life. But then what? Kind of like, okay, I'm healed. Now what? Well, something that could happen is that you could actually see how to use this new state? How do you make what has happened for you available and useful for people around you? Instead, we just kind of want to walk around and be in purple light and loving and joyous. It's kind of like, hey, while you're walking around being in purple light and loving and joyous, you just walked by a family that's homeless and hungry. What are we going to do about that? It was interesting. It made me think of, in the Bible, there is a story of this woman who, they talk about it in the biblical story, that she had an issue of blood, and what we actually think of that now is that she had some kind of cancer, or she had some kind of blood-related disease. And she didn't approach Jesus head on, but she believed that if I can touch the hem of his garment, just the hem. He doesn't have to say anything to me. He doesn't have to do anything for me. He doesn't even have to physically touch me. But I believe that if I could get to the hem of his garment, I will be made whole. And there's this old sick woman trying to get through a crowd of people on the ground, trying to touch the hem of his garment. And at the moment that she touched it, he said, somebody touched me. He couldn't even see her. It said, somebody touched me and said, woman, thy faith has made thee whole. Not me. I didn't make you whole, but your faith has made you whole. That you believed that you could be whole, made you whole. So, whether your transformation is going to be spoken about 2,000 years from now, about this man or this woman who lived in this community far away from the city, and this is what happened to them, and as a result of what happened to him, their whole community shifted. That could be your story 2,000 years ago from now, of people talking about why they can have transformation. Our stories and our transformation is not just for us. It is for the world. And I'll just say this last thing. In the climate that we're in now, whether it's political or religious or how you view it, people are trying desperately to be heard on either side. Whether you agree with it or not, racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, all of it is based in people thinking that if you have freedom, I have to lose something. We have work to do. Our transformation is not just for us. Our transformation is for the world. God bless you and thank you.